Welcome back to Mojo Talk Radio, a place for real talk to help spiral up your life. And, the interviews are coming fast and furious only because I am engaging with some really great, powerful influencers, change makers, and leaders. And the minute I finish one, there's another one standing right there. And I just want to absorb as much as I can and get right in there and dive deep with these people on an ongoing basis, because that's really how we learn. We have to hear things many times in many different ways to really get a great sense of what it is and how we can interpret the information and apply it immediately, if we can, to our own lives. So welcome back, and please, the people that I bring on here, we're always going to have a way to follow up with them or link up to them. If you feel so inclined, please don't hesitate to reach out. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you grow and grow into your greater self. So I'm very pleased today to welcome today's guest on today's show. We've had her on before. She's, I will call, a reoccurring guest, and we'll have her on again. Her name is Gaudet, and she is the president of Eve of Change. Eve of Change. It's an executive coaching company, and she helps leaders who are already high performing move into another level of performance that they have yet to meet. And she's been doing this for some time and is just knocking it out of the ballpark with her leaders, and especially with female leaders who are striving to do their very best out there on the international landscape. So Eve, welcome, and thank you for being with us here on Mojo Talk Radio.
Thank you, Pamela. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. I am such an admirer of your work, and I love the community that you keep drawing in and drawing together, and what you stand for. And I'm just honored to be here to be part of that. So thank you.
Well, welcome. And Eve, I'm really stoked about today's conversation because I hear it a lot from people, especially those that are on the inside of a corporation, for instance, and they are consistently doing what they need to do to climb that ladder, yet they might have reached a plateau and not quite sure what to do next. What's next? A lot of people ask. I mean, I know I ask that at times too. What's next? I've done so much stuff. Where am I taking this? And sometimes we can't get the thinking to work on what we can possibly do. And I know you refer to this stymied position as the gray zone. Mm-hmm. So please help us understand what the gray zone is, and we'll keep moving along to understand how we can sort of shift ourselves out from that place.
Well, that's a great intro, so thank you. Yeah, it is. I call it the gray zone because that's what it feels like to me. It feels like I'm in a cloud, kind of like when you're on an airplane and you're way up there in the clouds and you can't see down below you. You know you're moving forward, but you don't really have any control, or you think you don't have any control about anything. And for some of us, that gray zone can happen in our business because, we've had a great year, but we may be in a business where it's upping the ante. We set goals around our revenues and what we want to do and the impact that we want to make. But sometimes there just comes a time where we kind of we stop and we just go, what the heck is going on around me? And it's just that inertia of just grayness. I love that you pointed out that for so many people, it's also when you work in another organization that isn't your own, and particularly large organizations, although I see it in small ones too, change, which is now the new constant, mm-hmm. and it disrupts everything. And it takes us away from what we know to be true. And we think that we don't have any control over what to do. And so we kind of let ourselves fall victim to it. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm here to tell you that I have been in that gray zone so many times, both when I was in a large organization and in my own business. And in fact, the last few days, I was in it.
So Eve, give us a sense of what it feels like, because I think a lot of people assume that when we look at, say, for instance, people like yourself, you're on top of your game, you're leading a large organization, you have a great track record from your corporate life, that what can you possibly know about that gray zone? Now, I know you just said that you just came out of one, but give us a little bit of a feeling on what that can possibly look like for the rest of us.
Okay, that's a good question. So, and this is the start of a process that I use to help get me through this. And I'm going to share it with you today. And I'm going to put it down on paper, and so that your listeners will have access to it. So I think you'll give them a link when this is up. So it's that feeling of you're kind of standing there like, where do I put my foot forward now? Or I'm overwhelmed and I just can't deal with this anymore. It's less hope. It can leave some of us feeling anxious, certainly vulnerable. It's just that I want to crawl under the covers because I can't deal with what I don't know. So the way I always do it is, manage it, is I always visualize, what is this looking like? Like, what is really going on here? And then I feel it. So last night at the dinner table, my daughter was home and I said, yeah, I'm just feeling this. And she said, but Mom, this happens. And she coached me through it to get to a place of getting a reality check, which I'm going to come to, and asking me those questions like, well, think about where you're moving forward to. What are your vision? What is your vision? What are your goals? Okay, so if you can look to those as your goalposts, focus on that. So it's that kind of thing. So that would be another thing that I suggest people do. The other thing is, and this is a huge one, is this a situation where you feel you do not have control? Okay, ask yourself that. And if so, what can't you control? Okay. The fourth question that I ask is, okay, so I'm feeling this right now. What can I anticipate going forward? What is down the road? Which is kind of like the vision and goals thing, but it's a little more practical. And I do it where it can be next week, next month, and I focus on that path of where I'm going in a practical sense. Then the trick is, at that point, once you've kind of gathered up all of that self-information, stop yourself and take a reality check. Is what I'm feeling and what I'm seeing and this cloud around me or that I'm in, is this real? Like, what is the reality of this? Am I really not in control of anything? Am I really hopeless? Like, really just ask yourself those questions and do that reality check, because often we get clouded with our perception, and that's actually what's going on. Mm-hmm. Yes, we may be stuck and all of those things, but this is a perception issue. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then we work with that.
Okay.
You with me so far?
I'm with you.
Okay. Okay. Then I tend to look at, okay, so what do I have control over? Because I'm not a control issue. I don't have control issues. Yeah. But I do like to be able to make my own decisions and write my own destiny. So what do I have control over? If I'm waiting for checks to come in to meet my cash flow this month, okay, what do I have control over with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. And I also look and go, all right, am I in this gray zone because I've overextended myself? My goals are too big. Mm-hmm. Everything seems overwhelming. Yeah. Okay, what can I do to break them down into small chunks? It's about taking bite-sized pieces. And sometimes if we think about our values, so say we're working in a large organization and there's some major change going on, and whether it's being handled well or not, you don't agree with it. And you don't agree with it so much that it's affecting your own sense of values. Well, then you've got some tough choices to make.
Yeah. So Eve, basically, with all of the questions that you would lay down for somebody around their feeling of grayness, it's really about helping them to disrupt, because I think we believe that we're always going to be getting the same thing based on past results, past performance, past experience. So it's a matter of helping us disrupt how we're thinking, how we're flowing those thoughts about what's happening in our body, those feelings that you talk about, and what's happening to take us to that next place. For me, I know I have a tendency to run away with a whole glob of stuff, whether it be my past results, whether it be, it's because I take my past results and I throw it into the future because that's all I've got.
Yeah.
That's all I know to do. So when I see that, I sometimes think, oh, well, that's probably going to happen again, or I don't know how to be different. So really it's about stopping ourselves with that runaway thinking that we sometimes do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? You hit it bang on. Absolutely hit it bang on. And instead of running away with all of that and thinking that you have the answers, what if you were to stop? You know, after you've asked all those questions, what if you just stop and kind of let yourself relax and be open? Be open to what is happening around you. And that's that reality testing. You know, am I seeing this for what this is? Do I have a role to play? You know, what is it about it that is disturbing me? But until we sort of sit with it and let ourselves be open, we're not going to discover, and we're not going to get through it feeling good about ourselves.
So let's move into a place around, you mentioned the word vulnerable. And I know people that are building their careers and they're tracking higher and higher and moving to that next level experience. There's that piece around vulnerability. We understand it. It's a real big buzzword right now, like authenticity. Now, there's the fear around vulnerability because it means pulling yourself to a place of openness that historically we were not vetted to do that, because it puts us in a dangerous situation. If people know too much about you, there's opportunity for them to use that information to hold you back, hold you down. So talk a little bit about moving into the vulnerable state in relation to feeling that gray zone. Because I think a lot of people, that's where the trouble starts. It's like, I'm not feeling me anymore, and that's why the gray zone is, I'm in that gray place, right? Yet I'm in an arena where vulnerability is not really the name of the game.
Well, guess what? You and we've talked about this off camera, and you and I are in this game simply because we're willing to go to that place of vulnerability. And it's part of who we've learned and come to be. And that is our authentic self. That is that I am willing to stand, and I'm willing to question, and I'm willing to feel that vulnerability. I'm willing to sit there and be open, even if there are people that are making judgments, even if there are people that may be using something against us. You know what? I'm going to stand in my space, and I am going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to ask those questions that I talked about, because that's the way out. And what it boils down to is it's my responsibility to get through it. It's nobody else's. You know, say executive has this big change going on, and you know, they've hired a change manager and all of this, and and for whatever reason, it's a lousy job. Well, you know what? I can't control that bigger picture, but what I can control is my place in it and my ability to support others through it and support myself through it. And that's about having that inner core, that it doesn't really matter what other people are doing. It's about me, and it's my responsibility to myself, because nobody else is going to change how I approach things.
Yeah. So one of the things I people slam into, and I used to do this to myself too, were those rules, the unspoken rules of work, the unspoken rules of leadership, the unspoken rules of playing the game, whatever the game happens to be, because there's always one that you're either in or whether you're aware of it or not. So let's talk about rules. I know people are very, well, maybe not so much so. I know the millennials are sort of dashing the rules away.
Yeah.
That's kind of refreshing, actually. I like hanging out with them for that one reason. But what about those of us that grew up around rules and the conformity issues around being ourselves? Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I know that sort of holds people in that mold, and it's that, and I think that's where the chafing comes in a little bit. And I know that's something I had to work out for myself, were those unspoken rules that either other people have placed on us or we have unconsciously placed on ourselves for acceptance sake.
Yes, well described. I guess what I do when I work with people, and as you said, I'm working with people who are already really good at what they do.
Yeah.
And what you're getting into is when you talk about that vulnerability and people who feel like they're in that space, that imposter syndrome as well, right? It's the same kind of thing. This is about really getting clear on your own view of the world and what you stand for. And I know I keep saying that, and it's also about continually treating yourself as the project. I'm my own project, and I am learning about myself all the time. I'm relentless with it. And, I encourage people to do that, because we get stuck when we think we don't have options because we're actually not trusting ourselves. So we really need to, again, stand back, be open, trust, and just view the world in a way that, what if it didn't have rules like this? What would I do if I didn't have to behave this way? What would I do if I went to that job interview that I really want the job? And what if I did the interview differently than what they're expecting? What if I did it my way? And I think, despite our generation, I think we're starting to see that there is a lot of movement there. And I think there is a lot more opportunity starting to creep in. And thank you, baby boomers who had millennial children who let them do that. Thank you, millennial children, for doing team stuff and just being open to everything. Because I think it will shift. It's going to take a while, but it will shift.
Good. So this brings up the topic of fun. Fun.
Oh, yeah.
Fun. And fun, to me, I had to learn fun. Imagine that. I'm thinking, well, how did I miss that core piece in my life? But when we're climbing, when we're creating, when we're building, when we want to be taken seriously, we miss fun and self-care. I put those two things together, at least for myself. And those things were sort of shelved when I had the time, when I got here, when I made that. So fun, how do we have fun, more fun? Especially, and I'll bring in women of a certain age, okay? What can fun be for us? Because I think sometimes we think, we're at that point in our life where fun doesn't seem to equate nicely to that image that we want to portray. So, and yet, the more I fall into fun, the more manifestation happens for me, because I've taken my foot off the universal brake.
Yes,
so
I love that.
Let's talk more about that, because I think people want to know how to have fun, even though I don't think they're actually asking the question specifically.
I think that's great. They want to have fun. And again, if you're in the gray zone, maybe that's one of the things that you need to begin to do, is like try fun. And I'm gonna link it up to some research I've been doing on brain neuroscience. And I think one of the things that we do is we get locked into doing things a certain way, and our neural pathways get set. And when that happens, we're less open to seeing things in lightness and in fun and doing things differently and innovation. And I think it's about giving ourselves permission to try different things, to do different things, to experiment, because our brains are going to we're going to shake things up, and we're going to create new pathways. And that's how we get innovative. And that's how we have fun. And that's how we can view the world differently.
Yeah. So I'm now on a healthy diet of fun, self-care, creative writing, walking, forest bathing. That sounds really woo, but it's a huge, huge piece
What
of
was it?
Forest bathing. That sounds really, really woo-woo. It almost sounds like hugging trees. Hugging trees is optional. But it's really about taking myself away from my environment where my environment is conducive to either work or responsibility of some sort, and moving into a place where none of that is apparent. It's just about being one with all that is.
Okay.
And allowing my energy to expand out to the top of the trees and further and further and further. And I can pull that. This is a daily practice because it's not something I was taught to do as a child or even in my earlier adult years. My earlier adult years was about being responsible. Doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun, right? Because people knock this responsibility thing into you, and you think that's why you're here. And responsibility is great. That's what keeps our civilization going. But at the same time, what about that big, big part of us that we've learned to containerize and compartmentalize to a degree that we don't even recognize ourselves? And, I think it's a great thing for leaders to start to understand. So they understand, one, themselves, two, the people they're working with, and three, the brand new world in which we're moving into, where the creative sides of us is now being called on in a bigger and bigger way, so we can innovate to the new places that we need to actually go and solve world problems, like the food situation, the environment, all of it. So it's about expanding that, the unseen of ourselves.
It is about expanding that. It really is. And, for each of us, fun is different. For each of us, opening up to the world is different. Whether it is forest bathing or whether it is going out on your boat, it's different for all of us.
Yeah.
But if we don't experiment, we don't do it.
No.
And I was lucky enough to grow up in the city that you and I are both in, Victoria. And the thing that brought the most fun for me was hopping on my bike and just, at 8 years old, taking off and just discovering. So for me, that's fun. For other people, there's lots of other things, but we got to experiment and we've got to try stuff.
Got to try new things. That's right. Put yourself in new situations. Yes.
Yeah. And you know what? Unless you're working in the emergency room or ICU or, in a place that it's life and death, come on, folks, let's have fun at work. Let's see the humor in things. Let's be open to and curious to, well, why is that? Or that's really goofy. That's something, wow, that's always been done that way. Look at it that way. It's like, that doesn't make sense anymore, and being able to laugh about it.
That's right. My thing is, let's put a tilt to everything and see what happens. Like, tilt it and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, well, you straighten it out again and tilt something else.
Yeah, that's a great one. I have a father, and he's crazy. He's great. He's incredibly bright and creative, very creative. And I always growing up, it was sort of like, oh my God, my father always looks at the world, like from here. We're always looking at it from here. Yeah. You know what? I have come to really appreciate that. And what he's given me is that ability to sometimes just tilt, as you say, and shift and look at it just a little bit differently. And what do you see? And that's what I'm talking about with the gray zone. You know, does it have to be this way? Is what you're seeing really what it is? What if you play with it and have it and look at it from different angles, right?
So how many points are there to the gray zone process?
I haven't counted it up. Basically, it's a series of questions to put yourself through.
Okay.
You know, and you get to certain parts where you ask yourself the questions, you really think about them, you sit on them, and then you get to the so now what stages, and then you go through again. The important thing is, if you're in that zone, just feel it for a minute. Like everything else, it too shall pass.
It will pass.
It will pass, but you're in it to feel it. I know that sounds woo-woo, but you're in it to feel it. And
well, it's true, because the minute we want to get out of the pain, and if we can't get out of it lickety-split, what do? We distract, we medicate.
Yeah. So you know what? Your job in that moment is, shit, I am stuck in this gray zone and I'm just feeling like I don't know what to do. I feel so raw.
Yeah.
Okay, feel it.
I go find a tree. That's all I'm going to say. There it is.
You know, when I was preparing for this, I found some research done at University of or Pepperdine University in the States, and they did some research on 19 executives. And what they found is when they hit that gray zone or that place of really uncomfortable and change, and where they didn't know how to put themselves forward, these were their top 5 things that they would do. One is practice mindfulness. One is go back to the old self-awareness, tried and true. That is the foundation of everything. That's what I believe. Mm-hmm. Self-care, what you talked about. Looking to professional advice, perhaps with a coach, an executive coach, or another colleague at your level. Mm-hmm. And the other one, which I thought was really interesting, is take an action-oriented approach to supporting those who are around you.
Yes.
So I thought, wow, there's some meaning in that piece. So those are some things to again, actionable items to take away on what to do when you're feeling like that.
Okay, great. So Eve, what do you do specifically to get out of your own gray zone?
Well, once I get out of that vulnerable place, I've learned to say to myself, okay, stop. Why am I feeling this way? Feel it. What is it that I don't feel I have control over? And then I say, you know what? Actually, I know it's going to pass, so how can I make use of the time to do something different?
And the gray zone process is for anybody. It's not just for those that are working corporately inside of a job or anything. I mean, it can be for anybody. It's just a process of turning your attention towards yourself and
Exactly. And empowering yourself again, right? Knowing that it's your responsibility. You know, you own the feelings, you're responsible to make decisions and change things. And, you know, just get into it.
So Eve, we are now in the springtime, and we're both in Victoria, so you know what's happening on the outside. It's just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous balloons, flowers. We're just in Oz right now. Yeah. I just love this time because it all just poops, right? So what are you planning for yourself now that we've hit this time of the year? Anything coming up for you that's definitely non-gray zone matter?
Yeah, I've had a really, really busy winter. And so I'm waiting for it to be a little bit warmer so I can spend more time in my garden. And it's also a creative time for me. So I've got some projects on the go that I'm developing, some programs that I'm developing, particularly focused at new leaders and people moving into more senior positions, and around some areas that I'm noticing through my clients, because I do work with a lot of people in that new leadership and middle, some key pieces that they're all struggling with, like it's common themes. So I'm putting together a program on that, and the spring just brings that creativity out in me. So I'm looking forward to it. What about you?
Oh boy, same type of thing, but drilling down into, there's two things. Drilling down into me further, because when you're always in front of people, you want to make sure that you've got your stuff tight and stuff together, and you are understanding the entirety of who you are. Also developing some new programs, some dream journeying for people to manifest in some very difficult spaces. I'm holding space with people so that they can pop. All right.
Yeah, nice.
I'm like a popcorn maker. I like that. I got to write that down. And actually putting my hands in the dirt. I have this big backyard that I do nothing with, and I want to do some potting of flowers and just making. I just want to make things pretty this year.
Yeah.
That's part of my self-care too. It's nice that everybody else's yard looks great, but I want to do some creating too around that and see what happens for myself.
And it's not just that end product, it's the getting the hands dirty. It's getting in there. That's the best part.
That's right. And see what you can create using this and that. And, I can go to the store and buy something already done, which I have done. But I want to see what I can do this time. What do I like in there? What colors do I want to pull in? And then create a beautiful entrance into my home. So when I come into this threshold, I know I'm moving into a new way of being when I pass it, and there's an anticipation. So it's almost like creating a fairy door. I mean, there I go sounding woo again, but oh well, there it is, right? But it's a threshold effect.
It is. And you know what that is? That is taking control of what is aligned with you, and you're doing something about it.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the point.
Absolutely. Eve, again, thank you for bringing your wisdom to the Mojo Talk listeners. I mean, we live in one big bubble. And I know people like to chop it up: life, work, this, health. It's all one thing. And it's really about what goes on in our thinking and our emotional lives, and getting it lined up, and especially dealing with it when you are dealing with leaders and transformers. I'm calling them transformers. And what to do when you feel that feeling. And whether you call it the gray zone, whether you call it being discombobulated, or whatever it is you call it, you have the ability to take control and get something done. So thank you. And when you get the process ready, I will definitely have it ready for anyone that wants to partake and start to immediately use it in their journey. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Pamela. It was a pleasure. And thank you to your community for welcoming me in.
So to the Mojo Talk audience, once again, thank you for joining us here on Mojo Talk Radio, and stay tuned for even more guests coming. We're going to keep moving. We're going to keep moving them along, and I know Eve's going to be coming back to share some more insight into the world of executive coaching, and for thought leaders and all of those people that have their own people that they're in front of. So stay tuned, and don't be afraid, or don't be shy to connect to all the information that I put out. Connect to me, connect to today's guest, Eve Gaudet, and have yourself a fabulous, fabulous rest of the week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.